Okay. No problem, man. Peace. Well, little technical difficulties there. I want to welcome everybody to the Jam and Shred Dojo with Master Lee. Had some trouble getting the stream up and going this evening. But we are on live, so let's go ahead and start some stuff off with some jamming. Technology, right? This would be so much easier if we could all just hang out together in one big place, you know? Just be hanging out. Okay, cool. So let's do a little bit of jamming here. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight since we're getting, go ahead and get started. Just a little thanks there for Junkie Bass here. I want to thank Nick for helping me out. We're going to do probably kind of start a little bit, talk a little bit about chords, you know, a lot of metal stuff tonight. But let's go ahead and get started off with just the basic jam. This is one of my new ones, kind of a Cannibal Corpse in style. Sorry about that. All right. Well, that's kind of a good jam to go ahead and get started off with. Apologize for the technical difficulties this evening. Once again, this is the Jam and Shred Dojo with Master Lee. I am Christopher Lee Weiss, a.k.a. Master Lee. I want to thank everybody for joining us here on Junkie Bass. And let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some basic guitar stuff. I know a lot of the things that I do are kind of crazy, and that's from years and years of practicing and, just jamming. And then again, you don't have to be all that, in fact, that jam that we just listened to, let me kind of bring up my normal, kind of rhythm guitar patch. That jam that I just did, which was... just that simple little idea of... that's something that you can just use to jam on. You can just do that. You don't even have to add in the thirds and the stuff. My microphone's kind of hot. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. Okay. So when you think a little bit about, the power chord, right? What is the power chord? Well, when you think of kind of like a regular major or minor chord, we think of like something like, just something simple like maybe E major, something like E minor. But those chords are made up of 3 different notes, right? The root, the third, and the fifth. When we get rid of the third, and the third is the chord quality that actually kind of defines the chord. I mean, the fifth does too if it's flat, but normally a standard 5 just kind of sounds like a thick root note, right? Because it's like, there's a fifth is like what they call a perfect interval. And we can get into the debate of whether or not that's supposed to be exactly perfect or not, but we'll save that for another time. When you think about just playing the root and the fifth, switch back to my patch there. The root and the fifth, right? Just E and B, and it can be used all the way up and down the guitar, right? Every metal guitar player, if you're starting out, you can use 2 fingers, right? You can use this one. You can use this one too if you want. That was kind of an uncomfortable stretch. Normally, it's probably usually the first and third finger, right? But we can kind of get something cool going with that. Check this out. I'm gonna put some just kind of like a regular drum track on here. It's going to take me just a second. Had to shut everything down to get the stream to start. All right, here we go. All right, so let me just put on kind of like a basic drum track here. Eventually, right? Okay, there we go. Okay. So in that case, listen to the power chords. We can play more rhythmic elements. Basically what I'm doing with that, let me bring up and kind of kill the track there. When I think about that, I'm basically playing kind of a pedal idea, which is basically I'm kind of playing just that low string, low E, and in this case bouncing it off notes on the A string. And you can do this all over the place on the guitar. You don't even have to use the string, the E string. You can even use the other open strings, or you can use fretted. Little King Diamond there. But when you think about just the idea of being able to play, it doesn't take a whole lot to actually play. over this next jam I'm going to do here, let's kind of think about, just kind of simplifying. We can play, just again, a minor pentatonic scale. This one, we'll do a B minor jam here. And so I'm going to play B minor pentatonic, right? So we have B, D, E, F sharp, and A. Then in another octave. And then again, the last two notes again, B and D. So I'm only playing 5 notes, right? B, D, E, F sharp, and A. And we're going straight through that. But let's put a jam on and kind of listen to how just that scale sounds over the jam. Now I'm going to kind of break out of that scale as we go. But you'll hear what I'm saying. Just kind of watch that scale at the front. I'll try to overuse it. particular case, I played mostly pentatonic. I tried to play mostly pentatonic and the D major scale, although I did change up quite a bit, a few things. Not quite a lot, just a few things. But, just to kind of stretch out that pentatonic scale, there's multiple ways of playing the same thing. And that's kind of like when it's like when you learn the modes. They refer to, when you learn the guitar, you're playing what they call the modes, right? So, so if I play in this case, D major, right, which is D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. So we would consider that to be the Ionian mode or the major scale. And so when I play that, I can play that in this position here, but I actually know that fingering from all the modes, right? So if we think about, and I don't want to get too much into the actual modes, but let's take, for example, in the case of D, we would have A mixolydian, right? A mixolydian actually is those exact same notes. It just starts on A. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G. So those are the exact same notes, just in this position that I was playing here. So I was doing that kind of same thing with the pentatonic scale. So there's multiple ways of playing that B minor pentatonic scale, right? The one directly behind it looks like this. And the one directly in front of it looks like this. So I actually use that entire stretch on the guitar, even though I'm playing only the same 5 notes. Why is that a big deal? You might be saying to yourself, why do I have to learn to play those particular notes in a different area? Well, it really just aids in creativity, right? Guitar players, we're creatures of habit, just like any musicians, and we kind of play things in patterns that we get used to playing over and over again. And sometimes the patterns that we play, we kind of connect the notes that are on the same string. So by learning the pattern in a different spot, maybe you'll group different notes together just because of the way the patterns are, right? And it helps you kind of move up and down the guitar neck and just creates this kind of a different line. Also, you can't really slide between notes that are on 2 different strings. You can give it that kind of sound effect, but you can't get kind of like this kind of pattern. Like if I was going to go, see, we'll do this. I'll go. Those notes, like if I played them all on the one scale, I would have to go. Oh yeah, definitely. When you think about, those particular things, and Tall Dude, that's a great point, man. When you start thinking about, borrowing those particular keys, especially with the power chords, right? We could get into the pitch axis, or we could just get into the fact borrowing. It's the same point, right? Pitch axis is borrowing, is what it is. And I don't really even look at it as borrowing. I just look at it as the lack of information, right? So technically, I played all kinds of stuff over that. Even though that chord change was basically B5, I played the F all the time. So because again, it's metal, right? So we kind of want that flat 5, that kind of darker sound, right? So even though I'm actually playing against that works okay. If we're playing over some blues or some major jam, the flat 5 kind of sounds maybe a little sour, maybe what you don't want there. But again, being a metal guy, I definitely kind of want that, kind of dark sound. But, when you think about A major, for example, if we played the A major over the B, that would basically be B Dorian, right? So I would be getting the B Dorian mode. And then if I played G, I'd be getting B Phrygian. So again, that's all wonderful. That's actually a great point. And you can kind of just borrow from all of those particular modes. I actually don't look at it so much like that, though. I kind of look at everything from just B as my root note, and all the other tones have kind of a flavor off of that. Now, obviously, I have to know what those flavors are. I got to know that, the minor third is going to be part of Dorian, it's going to be part of Phrygian, it's going to be part of Aeolian, it's going to be part of Locrian. I have to know the major third is going to be part of, Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. But again, it's really just kind of grabbing those particular tones. But let's do another jam. Do D Mixolydian on this one. Now in that one, I kind of used, again, a lot of this stuff is Frank Gambale's style of breaking things down. Huge fan of Frank's theory and the way he kind of breaks things down. I used 3 separate pentatonic scales there. Now, when I say pentatonics, I'm not talking about the modes thing that I was just talking about. I actually broke the pentatonic. I used 3 separate pentatonics, right? So in every major scale, there are 3 different pentatonics. There are relative majors and minors, but they are actually, relative majors and minors actually have the same notes. So, the scales, and again, I don't really think of scales too much either, only because I'm kind of dealing with the resolve points. It's kind of like, if I'm playing over a C chord, it's like a C major chord, I can play the A minor scale because it's the notes of C major. It's just that when I play the first note of A minor, or the scale A minor, it's A, which is in C's case is the 6. So it's, again, just kind of shifting where those notes are. It's important, also as you play, to maybe not think so much about scale patterns all the time. I really try to see the notes on the fretboard more than the scale patterns. I just, it's trying to just kind of, and again, I'm not saying don't learn scale patterns, because that's kind of where you get the fingers loaded and all the little patterns that we play, right? Whether it's thirds or fours or, whatever little sequences that you learn, we kind of learn those in scales and play them. But so in the case of, I just think of minor pentatonics most of the time. Although, we can use all of the modes. So any of the minor chords off in a minor or in a major scale. So if you think about the way the chords come out of a major scale, the first is always a major chord, 2 and 3 are minor chords, 4 and 5 are major chords, 6 is minor, and then 7 is a diminished chord. And you can kind of play a, pentatonic minor over the 7th too as well, although you'll get one of the notes will actually be out of key. Sometimes that note's kind of cool. And again, out of key, what does that really mean? It just means it doesn't go to the group, right? If you're playing pop music and you play something that's out of key, yeah, people are going to go, hey man, that note doesn't really fit. But when you're playing metal, ugly is good. So you can kind of get away with a little bit more bending the key and, really getting away from those particular things. So in the case of the jam that I just did, which was D Mixolydian, I'm thinking of in G major, right? And so I could play A minor pentatonic, because that's the first minor chord, which is the 2. I can go to B minor pentatonic, because that's the 3. And I can go to E minor pentatonic, which is the 6, right? And I'm going to get 2 notes removed each time from those scales, but we always don't get the same 2 notes removed. Again, we always want to talk about half steps, right? The half steps are... they're awesome notes, the half steps, but a lot of times, and again, this is a little bit more of a bright up jam. The half step sometimes can give us a sound that maybe is, basically, unless you're playing the 7 and like you're playing the root note and the major 7 for a half step, usually one of those notes sounds kind of as a target note over the chord, and the other one is going to be more of a non-chord tone, right? So by removing the half steps, we eliminate a little of that sound. But again, I don't really remove it to avoid those sounds. I remove it to make it sound different. I have the same box of crayons. We only have 12 notes. And so again, it's trying to think about if you're programming a game or you're trying to make graphics and all you have is 12 colors and you're trying to replicate the infinite amount of colors and shades that are in the world. That's kind of difficult with only 12 colors. So as musicians, what we try to do is we try to eliminate some of the tones sometimes so that we give you audibly a different group of notes that you're listening to, right? Again, if I play the whole major scale in this particular jam, let me kind of cue that up just for one more time here. I'll kind of talk over it. Okay, so in this case, like if I play A minor pentatonic. Particular sound over it, right? Then I can play E minor pentatonic. And then B minor pentatonic. That is going to sound different than using the full scale, right? So if I use the full scale of D major, again, using, and again, in that case, I kind of played D major over D Mixolydian. So again, what does that change? Well, if we think about the Mixolydian scale and the major scale, there's only a one note difference. It's the 7, right? And so I'm forcing kind of a major 7 over that. So again, these scales are very, very similar. We can kind of play around and have some fun just trying to find the tonalities that we like. There are no rules, right? You're going to sit there and people can say, well, you can't play this, you can't play that. Well, those people are wrong. You can play whatever you want. There's only one theory rule, and I say that all the time. Sounds good is good, and what you think sounds good may be different than what other people think sounds good too. So let's do another jam. thinking about playing that, I used some flat fives in there. One of my all-time favorite guys, one of my all-time favorite students. Actually, I was in a band with him for a while. A dude named Patrick Gilmore. Patrick, if you're watching, dude, mad props. Love you, brother. But when I was explaining theory to him, it always, this was years and years and years ago. I remember talking about the notes that fit over a major scale, and all the notes that we were supposed to not play. He thought those notes were the ones that sounded better because of all the dark and the metal stuff that he listened to. And it just goes to show you that theory is just theory. It's just an idea of kind of organizing the notes. Doesn't mean that's what you're going to like or what you're going to enjoy playing. It's really just those kind of sets, right? Obviously, the chord changes that we set up when we play are really going to kind of get us in the mood for those particular things. Something like over this, the Mixolydian changes that I played earlier, because of the major sounds that are in there, we have a little less wiggle room as far as playing some of the darker tones. But as soon as we get into something like that's minor, oh man, that allows us to play all kinds of stuff, right? And we do that with the pitch axis a lot. So let's bring up that E minor bass line jam. We'll mess with the pitch axis stuff based off of that. But this time we'll maybe use some different sounding things. Let me bring up. There we go. Let's do this one. Start with major. Yeah, very true, the Marty notes. That's very true. This is kind of, you want to... This takes a lot of work, man. It takes a lot of work to learn, like, all the modes and all the scale patterns and all the things. And that's kind of, when I started thinking about it, I really just wanted to kind of see the notes on the guitar better, as a student of the instrument. You just want to be able to kind of see all of the notes and the patterns that you play. Remember, we always play notes. Guitar players are notoriously bad for always playing frets, right? Dude, how do you play that? Well, it's the 5th fret, then it's the 7th fret, then it's the 16th fret or whatever. Which is good because, when you're talking to other guitar players, that's a really quick and easy way of getting this across. And a lot of times in metal bands, that's kind of the only other people we're dealing with that have instruments, right? We have 2 guitar players or 1 guitar player and a bass player who's also a guitar player. And then we have the drummer who doesn't play, frets and notes. He's playing the drums. And then we have a singer. And, sometimes dealing with the singer, if your singer is knowledgeable and can play the piano or the guitar, you might be able to talk to them. But again, you're going to have to talk in notes. Everything is about the notes, right? And some simple things that you can do is start off with, when you play, start off in the key of C. Make as many jams as you want in the key of C because there are no sharps and flats. And maybe limit yourself to 1 string, right? Play down just 1 individual string up and down the guitar and try to get those individual notes down. And then start moving through the circle of fifths, right? The reason you want to go through the circle of fifths is because each time you go up to the 5th of whatever that scale is, only 1 note changes every time. So, for example, if you start in the key of C and you memorize where all the notes are on the guitar, then you go to the key of G, which is C's 5th, right? You add in the F sharp, right? And so now you only have to remember where the Fs were on the guitar and sharp them. All the other notes remain in the same spot. So this is something that you want to try to do. Again, easier said than done, right? You got to spend a lot of time jamming and a lot of time. It helps to play over the same keys. A lot of guitar music is really in kind of the same keys most of the time. Only because it facilitates open strings or it facilitates being able to play all of the different riffs and patterns that we have. Even when we tune flat, right? Like if you tell a piano player, if somebody's playing on the piano, if you learn a piece on the piano, it's completely in the key of A, let's say the key of C, right? So you're going to play in the key of C, and then all of a sudden we tell them to play in the key of C flat, right? B. Or we think about playing, on the guitar, if we're playing in the key of A and we have to go to A flat, we detune our guitars a lot of times. It's like we really don't even learn, those particular keys. That's one of the beauties of the guitar, right? You learn 1 scale pattern and you can play all the different scales, right? So if you learn this 1 major scale, I just learned it in G. If I have to play it in G sharp, I just move the whole thing up 1 fret and play the exact same thing I already learned. I learned it in A. Okay, well, it's the same thing up 1 more fret. But there is a wholesale change with the notes, right? And so when we think about actually playing and soloing, what I'm actually doing is I'm playing new groups of notes. Why that's important is when we actually go to target notes over chord changes, it's something that we're gonna try to do. Let's do a little bit of kind of a slow, darker jam. If you were ever a student of mine, this is a chord change that we've played over 1,000 times. But just to kind of demonstrate the chord change real quick, it's a typical E add 9 chord change or E sus2, however you want to look at it. Right, typical Metallica kind of opening. Goes to C major 7, and then B minor 7. Right? So it's going to be 2 bars of E minor add 9, 1 bar of C major 7, and then one bar of B minor 7. So I'm kind of keeping track of that, right? So as the solo goes through, I'm actually counting, okay, E, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, change to C, 1, 2, 3, 4, change to B, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I know that those notes in those particular chords, an E add 9 is E, G, F sharp, or E, G, B, and F sharp, because we're adding the 9 in. C major 7 is C, E, G, and B, and then B minor 7 is B, D, F sharp, and A, right? And so by knowing that on the guitar, this is something that you can kind of, and it's also from a creative standpoint. Hey, Zach, that's what I figured it was you, man. Dude, I want to give a shout out to Zach. That's Zach Dingman. He's an old student of mine. He's a fantastic dude. Just want to say hi to him. What's up, Zach? How you doing, man? When we think about playing that particular jam, limiting yourself to one string really will help your creativity quite a bit as well. Again, guitar players, we kind of group things in groups, right? So if I'm soloing and I'm playing G major, I always want to kind of play those three notes that are here. I always play E, F sharp, and G together. Right? And we have a tendency, whatever little licks we know, like, or by knowing the other notes on the strings, maybe we can group them together. Like if I add in the A, now I have F sharp, G, and A. And that sounds like the opening of Speed Racer. I don't know if everybody remembers that. But the idea of being able to play those particular jams, I'm going to stay on one string, actually. Let's bring up that jam. Zach, it's great to have you here, man. Seriously, I'm really glad to see you hanging out. So again, 2 bars of E, and real simple. E, then go to C, and then to B. Let me jam on that just for a bit. Yeah, it is a classic, isn't it? And so when you think about just kind of what I'm playing here, I actually am paying attention to all the notes, right? So E, G, A, B, and I get in the habit of actually telling myself the names of the notes while I'm playing. It's a good practice to get into. We'll talk about doing jamming songs in a second the same way. But I'll shut up and keep jamming. Yeah, and that's actually very good. Triad shapes, you know, anything that you can use, you know, when you think about playing those particular sets, right? Um, that's a great example. That's a great thing to do. Triad shapes, anything that you can think of. Triads, you know, and triads are great because you can extend them, right? So in the case of like, let's think of E minor 9, right? So the first triad would be E minor, right? And so you have E, G, and B. And then the next triad would be G major, G, B, and D, because that would take up like the 3, the 5, and the 7. And then you would have the B minor triad at the end, B, D, and F sharp, which would be the 5, the 7, and the 9. So just by learning those 3 triads, again, another Frankenbali hack, I guess, you know, not saying Frankenbali is a hack, man, that guy's a fantastic musician. But again, one of those hacks that you can kind of think of as just learning a triad. You know, that's really one of the keys to learning anything really well is to not fill your brain with a billion pieces of information. Fill your brain with one idea and then expand on that one idea and try to get it to use as much as you possibly can. So in in the case of playing over a lot of metal stuff, I got another one of the classic metal tracks we did here. If you can remember back in the day, one of the ones that was, I think it was like, which we'll jam over here in just a second. But again, it's essentially E, C, A, and B. And so I can start off by playing kind of like just an arpeggio shape based off of that. Going to C, starting with E minor. To match the E, then go to C, to match the C, then go to A, to match the A, and then for the B, obviously go up to B. Now, as far as a metal player goes, I always, when I play over the B, a lot of times, if it's a B minor going back to an E major, I'll play B minor and then go to B major. Because that D sharp kind of spells out E harmonic minor. Right? So using the minor, harmonic minor. And again, this kind of gets to the point of, man, I don't know how important it is to kind of, I mean, E is the root note, D sharp is the major 7, D is the natural, or the minor 7, right? So it's just kind of the sound that you want. If you use the D sharp, you're going to get the harmonic minor sound. If you're going to use the natural D, you're going to get the the other sound. Now, obviously, you got to be careful with this. If the chord change that we're playing has a D in it, which the one I'm playing does, if it's pronounced, and really what I mean by pronounced is if it's real close to the same octave that you're actually using, it will kind of sound sour. That's kind of the nice thing about playing over pure power chords, because you only have the root and the fifth. So you can kind of stretch out, the farther the wrong notes are, and I hate to say wrong notes, there's no wrong notes. Just, we'll say that darker flavor, right? The darker flavor, the farther I stretch it out, the farther that's actually going to kind of set me up to give me that sound, less dissonance, right? So if I think of E and F, right? Let me put it on a clean here. Okay. So if I play E, right, and F, and although I can't really get those kind of in the same octave over the top, but down here I can. E and F sounds harsh, right? But if I go up an octave on that F, it's harsh, but it's starting to get away from that really dark dissonance. And then I go all the way up to the final F, or well, at least not, if I don't bend. That sounds kind of cool. Right? We're down here in the lower octaves, really close to that E. It has a little bit more of a, and it's the same dissonance, but again, as far as we get up on the octaves, it just, it kind of sounds different, right? It's the same thing when we think about the way chord changes move. We hear things as human beings in a certain way. Like, for example, when I play the F sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord, man, that's a fantastic chord, but we kind of hear it as dissonant, right? Kind of dark and spooky. But that's because I'm giving you a chunk of hearing those harmonies together. When we start playing chords in a progression, a lot of times our hearing kind of latches onto the movements of the individual notes, and we kind of lose the harmony just a little bit. So, for example, if I bookend that chord, and this we may have talked about this a long time ago, if I bookend that with like G major 7, and then put an E minor 7 onto the end of that, this chord kind of loses its dissonance completely because of the way the ear is tricked as it goes down the chord change. Right? But if we just play that chord, it sounds dissonant. So, again, kind of that same way. Let's do another jam. Hey, cool. Yeah, it's a great change, you know. Let's do something in A. Yeah, and that chord change. And again, when you think about a lot of the things that I just played there, I was really borrowing, pitch accessing, whatever you want to call it. Again, just kind of setting it up, and that's very true. That chord change, G major 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, the B7, and that's actually a really good change. When you think about the dominant 7 chord, and going back to that E minor, right? That last little part of that change, B minor 7 or B7 to E minor 7, that's actually a great thing to solo and practice over. When you think about soloing, obviously, metal is a little different than other kinds of music because sometimes it's kind of like we're going for the effect, right? Like, for example, over this one, I play that diminished scale run where I went, right? And those tones aren't in those chords that are kind of in the background of that, but it sounds cool, right? In the case of, let me bring that up. So I'm going to change this to A. I'm going to take those last 2 chords in that chord change, the B minor or B dominant 7. B7 to E minor 7. Oh, let's put that in A. So if I play the A minor 7, I'm going to play it backwards. So if I go right to the D7, when you solo over that, you want to try to obviously, spell the change out so people can hear the change while the chord's not there, right? Because if I just was, that would be basically the 2 and the 5. If you're a jazz buff, right? 2 5 1. Right, in the key of G major 7, or key of G major. So if I play just the 2 and the 5, if I play just the G major scale over that in a metal style and I go, you can't really hear the chord change in the background while I'm soloing. A good soloist really is trying to spell those changes out, right? So if I think about the notes that make those chords specifically, and you don't have to use all the notes, but I'm going to use, like, in the key of A, the A minor 7, obviously the 3 and the 7, in fact in all chords usually unless there's a flat 5, the 3 and the 7 are kind of what dictate the sound of that chord, right? So I'm going to use the C to spell out the A, and then over the D7, I'm going to go with D and F sharp, same 2 notes, the root and the 3rd, right? But when I solo, just using that, you can kind of hear the... You can really hear kind of the chord change in the solo. So when you're playing over stuff that maybe is a little bit more, I don't want to say poppy, because jazz isn't necessarily poppy. Poppy obviously we kind of refer to just popular, but jazz is, what was the old joke that, you play rock, you play 3 chords to 1 million people, and jazz you play 1 million chords to 3 people, which is a shame, man, because jazz musicians are fantastic, just like Frank and Bali. Jazz is amazing. You should get into jazz if you're not into jazz already. And again, people think of jazz kind of when they think of like big band swing. I don't do that, man. Check out Chris Poland, Megadeth's lead guitar player, has got some really great jazz albums out. In fact, he just released a jazz record. And so it's probably going to be more like jazz fusion, and that's kind of more where I'm at as far as the fusion of like kind of rock, distortion, and rhythms with some of the jazz chordal sounds, right? Dream Theater, another one. But Dream Theater is probably still more along the lines of kind of a fusion metal band, whereas Chris Poland does some hardcore jazz on his records, kind of like Frank and Bali does. But Chris Poland, definitely being the Megadeth guitar player, has that kind of Megadeth-y sound. So let's kind of jam over that change real quick here. And I'm not going to do it for too long here, but so that was that A minor 7 to D7, right? again, just that kind of basic idea of trying to spell the chord changes out. That chord change, it's a great practice chord change. It's something that you want to try to do when you solo, is think of a chord change in solo without that chord change going on, right? All right, let's do another jam. Where's my... Let's do this one. Now again, in that one, kind of borrowing from the different keys and the modes. But again, borrowing is just a theory term for covering your tracks, right? I don't think of it as borrowing. It's again, over the years, my ideas have changed as far as like the way I approach the guitar. All of the theory and all the scales and the patterns, they can get jumbled up, man. That's a lot of information. There's only 12 notes. That's it. In fact, when we start to solo, especially when you think of like a minor key, I always think of kind of like the 4 bass notes of whatever that minor key would be, right? So if I'm playing an E minor, I think of E, which is the root note. I think of G, which is the minor third. I think of B, which is the 5th. And then I think of D, which is the minor 7. But then I always have 2 kind of fun notes as far as metal stuff goes right around that. Off of those 2 notes, right? Off of the 5th, I can play B flat, which will give me that flat 5, which if we think of the blues scale, right? That's always in the blues scale. So the B flat's there in the blues scale. And then I think of the E flat or D sharp, however you want to think of it. Obviously, since E is the root note, we kind of refer to that note as D sharp. But as far as the guitar goes, like it doesn't matter. Like you can play all the E flats you want, and everybody think it's D sharp. It doesn't matter. It's the same fret. So again, just kind of getting that same thinking of going. But again, just trying to have all of those sets in my mind. Just thinking of something simple like E, B, and then G, right? And then D. So then I can think of, in this case, the A, which is the 4. Or I can change it to using the major third, or major 7, excuse me. Just to kind of get that, just that change up around those notes. I can't change the root note, right? E is the root note on that jam. So E is stuck on the E. So all of my notes are going to resolve to E. So again, I can think of all those different modes, but I do see the modes when I'm playing. Like I said, when I'm playing fast licks or patterns, I have the modes memorized in my fingers so I can kind of see the way they link together. But again, ultimately, as a musician, and I got this really from playing a lot of jazz. When I started playing a lot of jazz, you have to be able to target the notes of the chords, right? You got to be able to set those notes down and be able to do those things, especially since those chord changes change key, or they, the chords kind of borrow notes, or, and again, no one uses the term borrow, but the chord has other notes in it that aren't in the original key, non-diatonic chord tones, right? So using those different sets and trying to set those things up is one of those great little things to kind of pull off. Let's do another jam. Let's see, what would be cool? Man, I gotta change my noise gate on that one. For some reason, and I got the whammy bar. I'm so used to. Well, you can't see my other guitars are up there, but the whammy bar. As much as I love the whammy bar, it definitely does kill my sustain. And normally that doesn't bother me, but the noise gate on my Vox Tone Lab is up pretty high to deal with some kind of light noise and stuff that's in the room. So it definitely has kind of this. Affected as soon as I start whammying stuff, the notes die off real fast. But I can probably fix that with my tube screamer. I don't know. Yeah, every guitar player should have a tube screamer. If you don't already have a tube screamer, get yourself a tube screamer or any other kind of drive, like the Boss OD1 or whatever you want to use. I just have the I can't even read it in the lights here. It's turbo tube screamer. I think it's the TS9DX. I think is what it is. I can see it in the light. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, TS9DX. So it's not just a tube screamer; it's a turbo tube screamer, which I think that means it has an EQ on it, right? I don't know if it has. It might have adjustable levels too. I don't really even use it other than I kind of use it as just kind of giving myself an active pickups. I've always looked at the tube screamer. I know a lot of guys actually use it as a distortion pedal or to give them a little bit of gain. I think of it as turning passive pickups into EMG 81s. So this is kind of like my EMG 81 in a pedal. It's not the same sound, but it at least pushes the amp a little harder so I can get kind of that same kind of thing. I can get more distortion out of it, right? All right. Let's do another jam. Same concept there. Always using that arpeggio shape of the E, right? So I'm thinking of D to E, going to G, and then B. E minor 7, right? What is E minor 7? E minor pentatonic. That's why the minor pentatonic scale is such a great solo scale, because it's basically the notes of an E minor chord. It does have the 11 in it, so you have, it's like E minor at 11, you know, because there's no 9. But again, that A, it's, man, what a fantastic sound, and it's a fantastic setup just to kind of have that same thing. People think of it as, you know, like, well, it's like the blues scale or that pentatonic scale, but I don't even think of it, the pentatonic scale, as the pentatonic scale. I mean, it is a pentatonic scale, right? But I'm always thinking it's just, hey, it's just a minor 7 arpeggio with the 11, or it's a minor 7 at 11 arpeggio. It's an arpeggio. And why arpeggios? Why do we always think in arpeggios? Because that's where the melody is, right? When we sit there and we're trying to create a melody when we solo, it's about playing the arpeggio tones. The scale tones by themselves, it's just kind of a link of notes, right? And yeah, there are melodies that are based off of that, right? We always would joke out quite a bit with, you know, like the major scale, like "Joy to the World," for example. That particular melody is the major scale backwards. You just put in timing. So yeah, there's a melody there, right? Just with the scale. But when you think about playing an arpeggio, it really gives you that kind of quality of the melody, right? So if I was to play an E arpeggio, and I would go, it just has that melodic sound, and then as it changes chords to something else, if I do, let's do E to C, right? So we'll go. Again, very similar, but you can hear when I add the C in, you can hear the chord shift down, right? You can hear just that change. And those two chords, C to E, you know, obviously they share C major 7, because E minor is in the last head of C major, of the C major triad, which again kind of comes back to Zach's point of just, you know, kind of thinking of the triads. When you set up a basic idea of thinking of triads and stacking the triads, all the chords basically come from stacking triads. Again, these are all Frank Gambale's ideas, right? I don't have my books with me right now. I'll show them to you on the next stream. I have 3 excellent Frank Gambale books. In fact, I think it's... man, I can't even remember the names. I'm sorry, Frank. I feel terrible. Especially since you autographed 2 of them to me, which was really awesome. Frank Gambale, his theory methods I really liked, because I think at the time, not only is Frank just a fantastic player, but he also, he kind of gives you the breakdown of the notes that you're after, right? You learn the scale, now what do you do with it? That's what Frank's books are for. If you're a beginner player and you're trying to learn to play, Frank's books are not for you. I would, I wouldn't say don't buy them, but again, the licks and the patterns that he's going to put in there are definitely some crazy things. It's the ideas of the theory that really breaks it down. So we kind of recap just a little bit what we've talked about here. Every major scale that I play has 3 pentatonic minor scales in it, from the 2, the 3, and the 6. You can play the relative majors from 1, 4, and 5 if you want. You'll get those same 3 pentatonics, you know. Yeah, Alan Holdsworth, definitely a fantastic musician, man, fantastic. He's that guy. And another thing with Alan is that his fingers are way longer and longer than my fingers, so some of the chord changes he can come up with are just insane. It always reminds me of the difference between Jake E. Lee and Warren D. Martini, right? Warren from Rat, he had just really long fingers, much like Steve Vai does and Alan Holdsworth. But yeah, his ideas of music theory are really out there, right? Now again, I'd probably stay a little closer to Frank's stuff because it works a little bit, I'm a metal guy, man. It's kind of like I like the jazz and I like the blues and I like all that stuff, but still I'm a metal guy at the core. That's just what I do. I'm a metal guitar player. So And not that Alan Holdsworth ideas don't work for metal too, because it does. Yeah, the guitar grimoire, I would agree with that completely. In fact, using the chord ones and the scales ones. But again, what we're really thinking about here is we're just thinking about there's only 12 notes. So if we can think of that concept, right? If you think of like kind of revolving, that's why I was so interested in Satriani's pitch axis idea. If I think about jamming an E, E is the axis that all the other notes kind of spin around. And I understand the interval sounds, right? I understand what a flat 2 versus a natural 2. I understand what a flat 3 versus a natural 3. I understand the 4, the perfect fourth. I understand the flat 5 and the natural 5. I understand the minor 6 and major 6, and then the minor 7 and the major 7. And I know what those intervals are going to sound like. And when somebody explains to me what key we're in, I know the basis of those intervals, right? So, for example, if somebody says we're playing in Lydian, I know that we're going to be playing over a major 7 chord, which means I have a root, a major third, a fifth, and a major 7. If they say Mixolydian, I know I have a root, a third, major third, a fifth, and a minor 7. If they say we're playing in Locrian, then I know we have a root, a minor third, a flat 5, and a minor 7. But again, it's just understanding that position from the fretboard, right? Trying to simplify all this information. No matter how Alan Holdsworth looks at the guitar, no matter how Frank Ambali looks at the guitar, Hendrix, Vai, Van Halen, dude, there's only 12 notes, right? So it's, again, trying to simplify that. And so my goal when I play is to try to always just see the notes on the fretboard. I know what the notes are on the fretboard. I know this is an E. I know this is an A. I know this is a B, right? I know where those notes are, and I know what the notes in the chords are. And so thinking of chord theory, and thinking about chord theory, especially in the idea of it, you can kind of tell from the name right off. If it's major, we know that it has a major third and a major 7. If it's minor, we have a minor third and a minor 7. We know if it's dominant, we know that it has a major third and a minor 7. And then the rest of the tones are kind of listed, right? So if you're going to play a 9, we know the 9's in there. And most scales have 9s other than like Phrygian or Locrian. If it says flat 9 actually in the, because it'd have to say that. It would have to be like, E minor 7, flat 9. Well, we already know they flatten the 9, or we know there's a flat 2 in there, right? And so minor 7, flat 9 is a great one for Phrygian, right? Because if you think about Phrygian has the root, the minor third, the fifth, and the flat 7, but it has the flat 2, which is also the flat 9, right? So, again, thinking of those concepts a lot along those lines. And I try to think of the arpeggios probably more for the fact that I'm trying to always break out of what I do, right? All guitarists, we get sick of what we do. We all play the same things. I always think the story that Dimebag had told his dad. Yeah, it is. It is a very cool way to approach theory. And when you think about, I guess, there are just so many different ways you can think of the ideas of what you're playing. But again, as Frank Zappa would say, at some point we have to shut up and play our guitar. Right? The theory is great. We can talk theory, man. I can talk theory forever. But no one wants to listen to us talk about theory except other guitar players, right? Hey, man, we know this theory, you know that theory. It's just kind of stepping out and always trying to come up with something new and a new concept. And so, again, all theory is fantastic. All the approaches are fantastic. And there is no one way, right? You see on the internet, you see all this stuff. This one method, you'll never have to learn another method. Well, yeah, you do. You have to learn all the methods. You got to learn all of the scale patterns. You should know 3 notes per string, 2 notes per string. You should know your scales up and down single strings. You should know where all the notes are on your guitar. You should know all the notes in the arpeggios. You should know kind of chord changes and how they resolve. Like, that goes from tonic, from dominant to subdominant to mediant to, tonic chords and how they kind of resolve. All of those particular things are important to kind of set up. But all of the whole point of all of this stuff is just to get us to sounding cool, right? Give us the sound. Yeah. Abstract algebra does help. That is very true. Being able to think about the theory and all of the individual patterns, and then knowing some of the palindrome chords, right? Knowing the chords that have kind of the same notes in them that are spelled out, that are kind of, if you look at it from a different root note, it's a different chord. We'll get into all of that stuff. But before I run out of time here, let's do another jam. Let's see what we haven't done so far. Let's kind of do kind of a little bit more of a laid back one. I know it's Friday night, metal night and all, but let's kind of change it up a little bit. We'll go back to B minor here. Again, thinking B minor, right? Or D major, right? B, D, F sharp, and A. So start with pentatonic. All right, again, that one I'm borrowing from B minor and B Phrygian, right? Kind of playing with that C quite a bit, using the C sharp, which would make it D major, using the C, which would make it G major, right? So, and again, here I am talking about theory already. But again, just kind of setting up those particular changes and being able to do those particular things. As far as being a good guitar player is about playing with feeling and emotion. All of this theory stuff is just to kind of get you there. There's a lot of great concepts and things like that, but I don't listen to music for that. In fact, I like the sound of the music from a chord standpoint. I've got a lot of hardcore jazz, but same with like listening to Charlie Parker or like John Coltrane. It's about the feeling, right? It's about the feeling that these songs and the things that we jam. That's why I like metal. Metal is my feeling. It kind of helps me. That's what makes me feel good, right? Jazz, I love jazz. When I'm in the mood for jazz, it's fantastic. But it doesn't scratch the itch of a runaway train, basically just pummeling down the tracks at 1,000 miles an hour. Basically, keep almost derailing the whole time. There's just something about metal for me. And again, that's you talk to a jazz person. It's like Scott Lyle, one of the guys that I taught with. Shout out to Scotty. Hey, Scotty, how you doing? Scott Lyle, who is the head of the music department at Maryville University now. He loves classical music, and he can sit there and tell you how angry certain classical music sounds. And to him, it does sound that angry, but nothing sounds as angry to me as like speed metal and death metal. I just like the sound of the distorted guitars. I like the double bass. I like the growly vocals. I just like that. That's what I like. That's my personality as far as like those things go. Now, as far as like just playing guitars, man, I play jazz gigs all the time. And so it's not that I can't play those musics and love those musics. I really do love all kinds of music. But when it comes to just the feeling of music and what I feel, metal is my thing. That's what I enjoy playing more than anything else. But again, that's what makes the world go round, right? If we are all metal guys, we'd only have one kind of music. That's why we all appreciate all the other guys and all the different kind of music that they listen to and what they play. So I know I'm running over time here just a little bit. I kind of got started late. I'm going to go ahead and do one more jam, Nick, if that's okay. Kind of run over my time. If I'm not going to go over too much farther, just do one more jam. But just end off on kind of one more heavy one. I want to jam over the Cannibal Corpse one that I wrote again last night. Again, same kind of concept there, right? So the idea of that riff... when you think about the, I just use basically minor thirds, right? We can kind of argue that that's in using the flat 5 and the minor third, and then using the fourth and the natural 2. But who cares, man? It's just a cool metal sound, right? So let's do it one more time and then we'll go. All right, here we go. Finish jam, Cannibal Corpse, away we are. going to do it for me. Zach, dude, thanks for hanging out, my man. Excellent, great questions, man. I really appreciate it. Definitely had a good time talking to you. And hope you enjoyed the jam, my man. This has been the Jam and Shred Dojo with Master Lee. I am Christopher Lee Weiss, a.k.a. Master Lee, here on Junkie Bass. Everybody have a great Friday night. Peace until tomorrow.